What's going on, everyone? These two here are the 2020 ASUS ROG Strix SCAR notebooks in the 15 and the 17-inch versions. The bigger model is especially interesting as one of the few available laptops built on a full-power RTX 2080 Super GPU and a direct successor of ASUS's ROG gaming behemoths of the past. This now sits at the top of the full-size ROG lineup and is a lot more compact and lighter than the previous ROG G703, plus requires a single power brick at full blast, not two. At the same time though, the SCAR 17 lacks certain features that gamers and professionals might have wanted, such as G-Sync or Thunderbolt 3, among others. The smaller 15-inch ROG SCAR is more of an incremental upgrade of the 2019 generation, with a hardware bump and some design tweaks, but also a more affordable price tag that should appeal to a larger audience. It starts right now at $2199 for the i7 and RTX 2070 Super configuration. In comparison, the i9 and RTX 2080 version of the SCAR 17 starts at $2999 in the US and around 3,500 euros here in Europe. We'll talk about the performance, thermals and noise levels in a bit, but first, let's quickly touch on this laptop's other important aspects. Just please take a quick second to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, it makes a huge difference for our small channel. Okay, these two laptops are similar in terms of design and build quality. In fact, they're among the sturdiest notebooks on the market, with little to no flex in the main chassis and strong screens with robust and smooth operating hinges. The lid is made out of metal, but the interior and the underside are plastic. Aesthetically though, this might not be for everyone. ASUS cleaned up the interior and exterior for the 2020 generation, but you'd still have to accept the funky interior graphics and the RGB elements. I do appreciate that both the light strip on the bottom and the ROG logo on the lid can be individually controlled and deactivated now. The weird cutout in the screen chin might also push some away. It doesn't bother me that much, but it's weird that you can see the cables and the adapters plugged into the rear placed I/O through this gap. Most of the ports are placed back there, with USB slots and the headphone jack on the left edge, and the right entirely reserved for the keystone, which is that mostly useless gimmick that I wish ASUS would have replaced with a card reader instead. And while we're in this topic, the I/O hasn't been updated from the 2019 SCARs, which means that there's still no Thunderbolt 3 or charging support for the USB-C port, no card reader, and all the USB-A's are crammed together on the left edge on the 15-inch model. This aside, there are also no biometrics on these laptops, no included camera, and the speakers fire through minuscule cuts on the sides. Surprisingly though, they're loud and fairly rich for a gaming laptop, but you'll still want to use headphones to cover the fan's noise while gaming. The inputs are fairly standard for a high-tier ROG laptop, with a full-size RGB keyboard and a small plastic touchpad with dedicated click buttons. That works fine, but you'll most likely hook up a proper mouse on this laptop anyway. The keyboard layout is similar between the two models, but with a numpad section on the SCAR 17. The 15-inch model gets instead of functions columns at the right and integrates numlock functionality into the touchpad. The typing experience should appeal to most potential buyers, but it's not really down my alley. I'm used to shallower implementations, the kind you find on Ultrabooks, and the slightly stiffer stroke here took me some time to get used to. Per key RGB illumination is implemented, with a couple of effects included in the Aura Creator software. The LEDs get bright and punchy, and the light doesn't creep from beneath the keys, as my only complaint here is the lack of illumination for the F1 to F12 writing on the function keys, which makes it difficult to find the right one in the dark. As far as the screens go, both laptops are available with IPS Full HD 300Hz 3ms panels on the higher tier configurations, and the 15-inch SCAR also gets a 240Hz alternative on the lower end models. All these are excellent options for gaming, but keep in mind that G-Sync is not an option with any of the SCAR variants, not even on the top tier SCAR 17, while it was available on the previous G703. For the most part, I'd say that G-Sync isn't necessarily a must on this sort of a panel, but you'll still notice tearing in certain situations. ASUS offer a hybrid Optimus and G-Sync mode on the ROG Zephyrus S lineups, but did not implement the required hardware for that here. The panels are also a solid choice for daily use, for browsing and video, with punchy contrast, deep blacks, pretty good colors at 100% sRGB coverage and decent brightness, at a little over 300 nits in our tests. This might not suffice for bright environments, but should be just fine indoors. Before we move on, I should also warn you on the potential light bleeding issues on these 300Hz panels, and especially on the 15-inch variants. We only experienced mild bleeding on our samples, but we've seen some atrocious implementations of these panels on other products, so make sure to check for it on yours. Okay, time to talk specs and numbers now. I've illustrated our test configurations here. The SCAR 17 gets the RTX 2080 Super DGPU in the 150W implementation and an 8-core 10th-gen i7 processor, while our SCAR 15 model is the RTX 2070 Super 115W GPU and the 8-core i9 processor, both with 32GB of DDR4 memory and fast SSD storage in RAID 0. As a particularity for the 2020 generations, ASUS decided to replace the 2.5-inch storage bay with 2 extra M.2 storage slots for a total of 3. Getting inside to the components is a fairly simple task, but the back panel is attached to the main laptop with 2 ribbons that power the LED strips, so careful not to sever the connections. Inside you'll get access to the thermal module, the battery, speakers, the Wi-Fi chip and the 3 SSD slots, as well as the memory slot. There's a fair bit of unused space, especially on the 17-inch model, and I wish ASUS would have implemented a larger battery here. Instead, they kept the 65Wh battery on both versions, so don't expect more than 2 to 3 hours of daily use and roughly 4 to 5 hours of video. With a short battery life, you'll also have to carry around the power brick all the time, which weighs about 1 kg for the 280W model required by these higher spec configurations. You'll also notice that the larger SCAR 17 gets higher capacity fans and an extra radiator on the CPU side in order to better cope with the higher power hardware. ASUS also implemented a different D-panel design on the two laptops, with intake cuts just on top of the fan on the SCAR 17 and around the fans on the SCAR 15. We'll further touch on that in a bit. Specs aside, ASUS offers 4 power profiles for these ROG laptops. Turbo and manual are only available with the laptop plugged in and are meant for gaming and other demanding loads. Performance is a jack of all trades and what I'd recommend for daily multitasking and casual gaming, while silent is great for video and light use on battery, but can also handle taxing loads at very low noise levels. We ran a couple of different tests on our review units, mostly on the turbo profile, from the standard synthetic benchmarks such as Cinebench R20, Geekbench or 3D Mark, to Blender SpecView Perf or Handbrake, which simulate real-life work with professional applications and video encoding. Take our findings with a grain of salt though, as our test units are both pre-release early samples provided by ASUS, and some aspects might change with retail BIOS and software updates. More in-depth analysis and tests are available in the written reviews on the site, where we'll also document any future updates, and I've added the links for you in the description. In just a few words, the i9 bests the i7 by 2 to 10% in multi-threaded tests and about 10% in single-core tests, running at higher clocks in short-term loads, where Intel's thermal velocity boost kicks in. That's no surprise, since both the i7 and the i9 are 8-core 16-thread processor with fairly similar capabilities. We've also tested these laptops in sustained demanding loads by running the CPU-heavy Cinebench loop test. The 8-core i7 processor stabilizes at 70+ watt on the stock turbo profile, while the i9 stabilizes at 80+ watt in this test, and the i9 also hits higher peak power in shorter bursts. The i9 allows XTU support for undervolting as well as theoretical overclocking, but that's not going to make a difference in this sort of an implementation. The i7 doesn't offer XTU support, but undervolting is possible in BIOS. Undervolting boosts the CPU scores, especially on the i9, but actually negatively impacts some of the combined CPU plus GPU tests and the real-life loads on the 15-inch model with its more limited CPU thermal design. That's why the i9 is better suited for the SCAR 17 chassis, and the i7 would be my recommendation for the SCAR 15 if given the choice. Now, as far as gaming goes on these laptops, we ran a couple of titles on several different power profiles and gather our findings here. Take a moment to go through them. And here are some charts comparing the two, as well as some of the other RTX 2080 and 2070 Super notebooks tested lately, plus the 2019 ROG SCAR running on a non-Super RTX 2070 GPU. The most interesting finding here is the excellent performance delivered by the SCAR 17 configuration on the silent profile, with quiet sub-40 dB fans. It comes close to the RTX 2070 Max-Q implementation in the Zephyrus S15 and the RTX 2070 Super in the SCAR 15, both while running at full blast. But there's a catch on both these ROG SCAR models. For some reason, ASUS implemented minuscule rubber feet on the bottom, which only leave about 2 mm of space underneath, and that pretty much chokes the thermal module by not allowing it to draw enough fresh air to properly cool the components. As a result, both laptops average CPU temperatures in the 88 to 95 degrees Celsius in demanding titles on the turbo profile, with the GPU averaging 82+ degrees Celsius and the fans ramping up to 49 to 51 dB at head level. Furthermore, the GPU is thermally limited on the silent profiles and clocks down once the heat builds up. However, raising these laptops from the desk by about an inch dramatically improves these temperatures and the overall performance. The SCAR 17, with its beefier thermal module and more open under-panel design, drops to 82 to 88 degrees on the CPU and 73 to 75 degrees on the GPU on turbo, and constant performance and temperatures in the mid-70s on the silent profile. The impact is more limited on the SCAR 15, which still stabilizes at 85 to 90 degrees on the CPU and 75 to 78 degrees on the GPU. This once more suggests that the i9 might not be the ideal option on this 15-inch chassis, especially for gaming. As for the external temperatures, the ROG SCAR 17 runs cooler than the 15-inch model, barely hitting low 40s in the hottest parts, while the SCAR 15 hits mid and even high 40s in certain spots. Both remain perfectly comfortable with longer gaming sessions, and both can be used with the lids closed, while placed in some sort of vertical stand and hooked up to an external monitor. Gaming aside, the fans remain active all the time in both laptops, even with light use, but they spin quietly on the silent profile, so you'll only hear them in a quiet environment. As a heads up, I also noticed some electronic noises on our SCAR 15 sample, so make sure to double check for those on your unit within the return window. Okay, time to draw the line on these laptops. If you're looking to spend $3,000 or roughly 3,500 euros on a top-tier performance and gaming laptop, this ROG SCAR 17 should be on your list. It's one of the best performers of this generation and one of the fastest notebooks on the market in general. At the same time, this might feel like a downgrade from previous G703, which offered a higher power CPU and GPU, G-Sync, and a larger battery. There are also some other high-spec notebooks out there with desktop-grade components that are going to outmatch it, but they're all bigger, heavier, noisier, and require 2 power bricks. In comparison, the SCAR 17 remains fairly portable and is overall a more balanced performance notebook. It still feels somewhat rushed to me for a top-of-the-line model. The lack of G-Sync is hard to accept on this sort of a product, and I would have liked a bigger battery, better I/O, and some biometrics. On top of this, I'm very pissed at those small rubber feet that choke the thermal module and impact the performance, and while this is addressed by somehow raising the laptop or perhaps gluing some sort of taller feet on the back, I sure wouldn't expect to have to do that on a brand new and expensive computer. As for the smaller SCAR 15, this has the price on its side, starting at $2199 for the i7 CPU, RTX 2070 Super graphics, and the 240Hz screen configuration. It's about 20% slower than the RTX 2080 SCAR 17 in games, and within 10% in CPU loads, at a fraction of the cost. At the same time though, this runs somewhat hotter and does not offer the same kind of smooth experience on silent, at least based on our unit. On top of that, this facelifted 15-inch SCAR faces tougher competition from the newer 2020 devices in the 15-inch segment, such as the Lenovo Legion 7i or the MSI G66 Raider, among others, and we'll get to compare this in the future once we review them as well. With that in mind, we're going to wrap up this video here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these products though, so get in touch in the comment section with your feedback and questions. And of course, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to our channel to get notified when we publish more content. Catch you later.